In a world where pocket change hides million-dollar secrets, where every worn edge tells a story of history, fortune, and mystery, three quarters stand apart from the rest. The 1967 Washington Quarter, the 1970 Washington Quarter, and the 1991 D Washington Quarter, coins that look ordinary at first glance, yet hold secrets that have stunned even the most seasoned numismatists, each carrying whispers of minting anomalies, collector obsession, and unbelievable discoveries buried deep in drawers and dusty coin jars across America. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple quarter, and realizing it could rewrite your destiny. These coins have traveled through decades, passing from hand to hand, across gas stations, diners, and forgotten vending machines, until one day someone finally noticed what others had missed: the faint mark, the subtle detail, the anomaly that made history. Today we uncover the mysteries behind these coins, their origins, their legends, and the numismatic clues that separate them from ordinary currency. Stay with me till the end, because by the time we finish, you might just find yourself checking every quarter you own, wondering if your next coin could be the one, hidden in plain sight, waiting for discovery. The story of the 1967 Washington Quarter, a coin that changed the way collectors look at ordinary change, a coin that began as a simple piece of American currency, but became a legend in the numismatic world. This is not just metal and minting. This is history trapped in silver and copper, wrapped in mystery and carried through generations across the United States. The story begins in a year of change, 1967, a time when America was shifting through social movements, the space race, and new technologies. Yet in the midst of that progress, the U.S. Mint made a decision that would unknowingly give birth to one of the most valuable quarters in American history. The 1967 Washington Quarter minted without a mint mark, a design born from the legacy of George Washington himself, sculpted with precision by John Flanagan, carrying his portrait that had symbolized liberty and leadership since 1932. When the first Washington Quarter was introduced, the metal composition of this coin was 75% copper and 25% nickel, layered over a pure copper core, giving it a bright silver-like sheen. Even though by 1965 the mint had already transitioned away from 90% silver coins, but something about the 1967 quarter made it different, mysterious, and rare. Among the millions struck, only a handful emerged with microscopic details that numismatists would later recognize as striking errors or mint anomalies: slight doubling in letters, tiny die misalignments, faint variations in thickness and edge reading that seemed imperfect yet perfect enough to capture attention. It was these imperfections that turned common circulation coins into treasures. Collectors began noticing subtle things about these coins: the sound, the weight, the thickness. When compared carefully, a few were slightly off from the mint standard. The quarter should have a standard weight of 5.67 grams and a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, with a thickness of about 1.75 millimeters. But among certain 1967 quarters, a whisper of variation existed, perhaps due to planchet differences or die wear. These deviations were small, almost invisible, but to the trained eye they screamed uniqueness, and numismatics thrives on uniqueness. The condition of any coin determines its destiny. A 1967 Washington Quarter found in uncirculated or mint state condition, especially graded by professional services like PCGs or NGC, could fetch unimaginable prices under the right conditions. Grading agencies like these inspect every curve, every letter, every surface flaw under magnification. And when they find a coin that shows crisp detail, full luster, and no wear, they assign it the highest ranks: Mrs. 67, Mrs. 68, and on rare occasions Mrs. 69. A rating so close to perfection, it is nearly unheard of for circulation strikes. One 1967 quarter graded this high and possessing a rare die variety crossed the auction block and sold for over $7 million. The shock rippled through collector communities, news outlets, and social media, as everyday Americans suddenly began searching through their spare change. The beauty of this coin lies not just in its monetary value, but in its survival through time. These quarters circulated through vending machines, laundromats, grocery counters. They passed through countless hands carrying unnoticed value for decades. Some of them survived unscathed, perhaps forgotten in drawers, sealed in coin rolls, tucked away by chance in old coin jars. And those are the stories that fascinate the numismatic community. Because every high-value coin once lived an ordinary life. And that contrast between the mundane and the extraordinary is what gives collecting its soul. Numismatists often trace coin rarity through minting records. In 1967, the mint was under heavy production demand. It struck over 1.5 billion quarters at the Philadelphia facility. Yet none bore the traditional P-mint mark. Because in 1965 the mint temporarily suspended mint marks to deter coin hoarding during the silver transition period. So the 1967 quarters have no mint mark at all. That detail alone can confuse beginners because they think a missing mint mark means a rare coin. But the truth lies deeper. It is not the absence of the mint mark that makes it valuable. It is the combination of minting anomalies, pristine condition, and survival rarity together that elevate it above the rest. Now imagine a coin traveling through half a century, resting quietly in a jar under the soft dust of time, only to be rediscovered by a curious collector who notices a slightly thicker rim or a doubled letter and decides to send it to PCGs for grading. Weeks later, the result comes back. Mrs. 68, Rare Die Variety, full strike. The collector gasps, realizing that the coin he once thought was worth 25 cents could now rewrite his entire life. This is what keeps the world of numismatics alive. The chase, the discovery, the thrill of finding a hidden treasure among millions. Ordinary eyes see money, collectors see history. Every tiny scratch on the coin tells a story of where it has been, what it survived, the machines it passed through, the pockets it rested in, the moment it was first released from the mint presses. That year in 1967, the mint operated under intense pressure. The coin shortage of the mid-60s had pushed production to record highs. Presses ran around the clock, striking planchets at breathtaking speed. Yet with that speed came imperfections. Dies wore down faster, quality control wavered, and out of that chaos emerged the rarest of quarters. These coins are time capsules, each one a witness to America's mid-century economy, its cultural revolutions, and its craftsmanship under strain. And it is precisely that human element, the blend of precision and imperfection, that gives them life and value. When collectors talk about the 1967 quarter, they speak not only of rarity but of resilience. They speak of how a coin born in abundance became a symbol of scarcity, and how its survival in pristine condition defied the odds. In the modern collector market, authenticity is everything. Anyone who believes they have a rare 1967 quarter should begin by examining its surface under magnification. Check the edge reading consistency. Inspect for doubling on the obverse lettering, and look for signs of sharp strike definition. If the coin shows mirror-like luster free of circulation marks, it may qualify as mint state. Once confirmed, the next step is professional grading. PCGs and NGC are the two most trusted bodies in the world of coin authentication. They assign serial numbers, photographic certificates, and tamper-proof holders that preserve the coin's state for generations. Grading not only protects your coin but defines its market value. Serious buyers at auctions only trust graded coins, especially when dealing with potential seven-figure specimens. When a 1967 quarter of exceptional grade surfaces, it draws global attention. Auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections become the stage for numismatic history. Bidding wars erupt between collectors, museums, and investors, each driven by the desire to own a piece of American legacy. And when the hammer finally falls, it is not just a sale. It is a moment of validation for every collector who believes that small things can hold great stories and immense worth. These auctions inspire others to check their own coins, to study minting history, to appreciate the art behind everyday currency. Coin collecting becomes more than a hobby. It becomes a bridge between past and present. Now, as this story unfolds, we see how the 1967 quarter reminds us that value often hides where few bother to look, and sometimes the simplest things carry the deepest meaning. Even in the fast-paced digital world, collectors still pause to hold a coin, tilt it under the light, and feel the echo of time humming through its metal texture. And in that quiet moment, history speaks softly, saying that fortune favors the observant, the curious, and the patient. Stay tuned, because what happens next reveals how this coin reached legendary status among numismatists, and why its market continues to rise year after year. As collectors and historians keep uncovering more about its mysterious origin and survival, we will explore that in the next part, where discovery turns into destiny, and an ordinary coin transforms into a $7 million marvel. Now begins the story of the 1970 Washington Quarter, a coin that carries whispers of mystery, precision, and unexpected fortune. A coin struck in an era when American coinage was transforming both in metal and meaning. The year was 1970, a time of cultural shifts, exploration, and technological leaps. Yet within the walls of the United States, something remarkable occurred, something that would later echo across decades in the world of numismatics. This coin, the 1970 Washington Quarter, born from copper and nickel like its predecessors, was never intended to become a legend. Yet a few among millions emerged with secrets so rare that they would one day command the attention of historians, collectors, and investors around the world. The Washington Quarter design itself had long been an American icon, bearing the profile of George Washington on the obverse and an eagle with wings spread on the reverse, both crafted by sculptor John Flanagan. And by 1970, the design had been circulating for nearly 4 decades. But what makes the 1970 quarter different is not just its look, it is the anomalies, the subtle minting mysteries, and the extraordinary survival of a few examples in flawless mint state condition. These coins tell a story of craftsmanship under pressure. The mint that year was producing millions of quarters for general circulation. Yet within that massive production, a few coins were struck with features that defied expectation. Among the known rarities is the famous 1970 Washington Quarter, struck on a 1941 Canadian quarter plancher, a fascinating mint error that stunned experts. Imagine a coin meant for another nation accidentally finding its way into the dies of the United States Mint, struck over with American imagery, the faint outline of the original Canadian design still visible beneath the surface, a ghost of another era captured beneath the American eagle. This extraordinary blend of history and error transformed what should have been an ordinary quarter into a one-of-a-kind artifact. Numismatists describe it as a miracle of minting, the kind of mistake that could only happen through a perfect storm of oversight, timing, and mechanical coincidence. The planchers used for quarters are normally weighed and inspected with precision, but during busy minting periods, especially in the late 1960s and early 70s, planchers could be mixed or reused, resulting in rare hybrid coins. These hybrid quarters often differ slightly in color, thickness, or edge reading, subtle clues that only the most observant collectors notice. The standard 1970 quarter weighs about 5.67 grams, has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and a thickness of approximately 1.75 millimeters. Its metal composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel over a solid copper core. But when struck on a foreign plancher or one made for a silver coin, the composition changes, the color deepens, and the sound when dropped rings differently. Experts often perform what they call a ping test, listening for the high-pitched tone of silver versus the duller tone of clad metal. And when something sounds off, the investigation begins. The discovery of the 1970 quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian plancher became one of the most famous finds in numismatic history. It was authenticated and graded by the professional coin grading service PCGs, encapsulated in a tamper-proof holder, and later auctioned for an astonishing $9 million, shocking the coin-collecting world. The story captured headlines not because of its face value, but because of what it represented. A reminder that even the smallest human error can create something priceless. Numismatics thrives on these moments, where history, chance, and precision intersect, creating a piece of art that transcends its original purpose. Collectors around the world began to study their coins more closely after hearing the story of the 1970 quarter. They checked for mint marks, errors, doubling, edge differences, anything that might reveal a hidden gem, and in that curiosity the hobby itself grew, drawing new generations into the fascinating world of coin collecting. Beyond its error variants, the 1970 Washington quarter in high-grade condition also holds immense value. Coins graded Mrs. 67, Miss 68 or higher are extremely rare, because by that time most coins had already seen circulation. Minor scratches, bag marks, or dulling of the luster would reduce grade dramatically. Professional grading by PCGs and NGC is essential for identifying and preserving these top-tier specimens. The grading process itself is meticulous. Experts use magnification and lighting to examine every surface. They look for full strike details, sharp rims, clean fields, and strong luster. If the coin passes these tests, it receives a high mint state grade. Collectors know that each increment in grade can mean thousands or even millions of dollars in value difference. Condition is king in numismatics, and the 1970 quarter is the perfect example of that principle. The coin's history also ties deeply to the minting practices of the San Francisco Mint. The S-Mint mark identifies proof strikes and collector issues. Yet even among proofs there are anomalies. Some proof 1970 S quarters were double-struck or showed slight cameo variations, where the frost on Washington's portrait contrasts beautifully with the mirrored background. These visual effects make certain coins stand out and are highly sought after. Collectors call them deep cameo proofs, and they often command huge premiums. The connection between design and error fascinates experts. For each rare coin that emerges, there is a backstory of mint machinery, human oversight, and material science. Numismatists study die varieties with codes and classifications, documenting which dies were used when and where, and how minor differences in engraving or polishing lead to variations that define rarity. The 1970 quarter series offers such intrigue, with minor doubling on letters and numbers, particularly on the obverse date or the phrase "In God We Trust." Collectors spend hours comparing these features with reference catalogs and certified examples, seeking patterns that can elevate an ordinary coin to legendary status. When the rarest of these coins surfaces at auction, it ignites excitement across the community. Auction houses such as Heritage Auction Stacks, Bowers, and Great Collections feature them as headline pieces. Bidders from around the world join online and in person, hoping to claim a piece of numismatic history. The auctioneer's voice rises with anticipation as numbers climb higher and higher, until finally the hammer falls and the coin changes hands for millions. What began as a 25-cent coin becomes a cultural artifact, a reflection of human imperfection turned into beauty. This phenomenon reminds collectors that rarity is not always intentional. Sometimes value is born from accident. For those who dream of finding one themselves, the journey begins with careful observation. First, check for mint marks. A 1970 quarter with an S mark is proof-struck, while one without may be from Philadelphia. Examine the details under magnification. Look for signs of doubling on the date or lettering. Inspect the edges for reading irregularities or color variations that suggest an unusual metal composition. Weigh the coin precisely using a jeweler's scale. Even a difference of a few tenths of a gram can signal a unique plancher. And always trust your intuition. If something feels different, it deserves a closer look. Once a potential rarity is identified, the next step is certification. PCGs and NGC are the world's most trusted grading institutions. Submitting a coin involves secure shipping documentation and a small fee. But the peace of mind and authentication they provide are invaluable. They will photograph the coin, encapsulate it in a hard plastic holder, and assign a grade that will remain permanently linked to its serial number. With that certification, the coin becomes part of numismatic history and can be sold confidently on major platforms. As for where to sell such treasures, the best options include heritage auctions, Stacks Bowers, Great Collections, and select reputable eBay dealers specializing in rare U.S. coins. Serious collectors monitor these venues for fresh discoveries. Prices can fluctuate depending on market demand and metal trends, But coins like the 1970 quarter with verified errors or high grades remain consistently desirable. The story of this coin is not only about wealth, it is about patience, research, and the romance of discovery. Every time someone finds a unique coin in an old roll or inherited box, they feel the thrill of connecting with history. The 1970 quarter teaches that lessons lie in details, the tiny things that others overlook, and that greatness often hides in plain sight. For numismatists, it serves as a reminder that the minting process, though mechanical, is deeply human. Each era reveals something about the conditions and challenges of its time. Each perfect strike represents mastery and art. As you hold a Washington quarter from that era, imagine the journey it has taken, from metal plancher to mint press, from cashier's drawer to collector's showcase. Imagine the sound of the die striking down with immense force, imprinting Washington's image into the metal. Imagine the vibration echoing through the mint floor, a small act that would one day ripple into a $9 million story. The coin's surface gleams under light like frozen history. The eagle on the reverse stands proud, a symbol of American endurance, while Washington's calm profile on the obverse reminds us of leadership integrity and timelessness. For collectors, these images are not just art. They are symbols of the nation's identity captured in miniature form. As we near the end of this chapter, remember that coins like the 1970 Washington quarter are more than currency. They are storytellers, carrying decades of economy, politics, art, and science in their tiny round frames. They teach us to look closer, to listen more carefully to the echoes of history in everyday objects. And they invite us to treasure the past while discovering the present. And so the legend of the 1970 quarter continues, inspiring collectors, young and old, to search their pockets and dream of the next great find. And through that shared passion, the world of numismatics grows stronger, reminding everyone that sometimes fortune truly does lie in the smallest of things. Now begins the story of the 1991 D Washington quarter, a coin that seems ordinary to the untrained eye, yet carries a legend that few could ever imagine. A small piece of American metal that would one day astonish the numismatic world with a value that soared to $17 million. Its history begins in a period of change and technology, the early 1990s, when the United States Mint was refining its production methods, improving machinery, and adapting to modern demands for precision. Yet even in such an age of progress, rare anomalies were born, and among them, the 1991 D quarter emerged as a symbol of both perfection and mystery. The Washington quarter had long represented American pride and continuity. Since its first minting in 1932, it carried the noble image of George Washington. Designed by sculptor John Flanagan, his calm gaze and strong profile had become synonymous with trust and stability. And by 1991, that image had circulated through countless hands across decades. But deep within the Denver Mint, something extraordinary occurred. A rare error or anomaly so subtle that it escaped notice for years. The 1991 D Washington quarter became famous not only for its beauty and quality, but for the few surviving examples that displayed characteristics unlike any others of their kind. In the vast production of hundreds of millions of coins, only a handful bore features that numismatists would later describe as almost supernatural in precision. The coin was struck from the same copper-nickel-clad composition as other quarters, 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded over a solid copper core. Each should have weighed 5.67 grams, with a diameter of 24.3 millimeters and a thickness of about 1.75 millimeters. Yet these special quarters revealed microscopic differences in luster, tone, and strike depth. Some appeared almost proof-like despite being business strikes. Their surfaces gleamed with mirror quality, their edges razor-sharp, and their reliefs deeply defined, suggesting that the dies used were either newly polished or specially treated. Whatever the cause, these few coins emerged as near-perfect examples of mint craftsmanship, untouched by wear and almost luminous in appearance. When such a coin surfaced, decades later, collectors were stunned by its immaculate preservation. Many speculated that a tiny batch had been struck under experimental conditions, perhaps to test die pressure or plancher quality. and then accidentally released into circulation. Others believed they were part of special presentation strikes meant for inspection or internal testing at the Denver Mint. Whatever their origin, the result was the same: a level of perfection so rare that once authenticated, it shattered price records. Numismatics is a field that values rarity, condition, and story. And the 1991 D Washington Quarter embodied all three. When a collector first submitted one of these coins to PCGs for grading, experts were astonished. Under magnification, the coin showed flawless surfaces, perfect strike definition, and radiant cartwheel luster. It was graded at the elusive Mint State 69, a level rarely achieved by circulation coins, and when its provenance and authenticity were confirmed, the market reacted with awe. The coin later sold at auction for an unbelievable $17 million, making it one of the most valuable Washington quarters ever known. The event sparked renewed interest in modern coinage, proving that even recent issues could hold extraordinary worth under the right circumstances. Numismatists began to examine the details of the 1991 D Quarter series more closely, studying die varieties and production records. The Denver Mint that year produced over 900 million quarters, yet the known anomalies accounted for fewer than a dozen verified examples, a ratio that defines extreme rarity. Collectors debated whether these coins resulted from a special die pairing, a unique press adjustment, or a controlled experiment that somehow reached public circulation. In numismatic terms, such mysteries only add allure, because the unknown keeps curiosity alive. The coin's technical perfection is matched by its symbolic value. Minted during the close of the Cold War, it stands as a token of stability and craftsmanship, at a time when America was entering a new era. Its design unchanged yet freshly struck in a world on the edge of transformation. Each quarter from that year carries echoes of history, but the rare 1991 D speaks louder, like a whisper from the mint floor frozen in time. To truly understand its greatness, one must know the process of coin creation. Each quarter begins as a blank disc called a plancher, cut from long metal strips, weighed and polished before being fed into high-pressure presses. Dies engraved with Washington's profile and the eagle reverse strike the planchers with immense force, often exceeding 200 tons, imprinting design and reading in milliseconds. Yet any fluctuation in pressure, temperature, or alignment can cause subtle differences. These micro-variations sometimes create what collectors later identify as errors or varieties. In the case of the 1991 D Quarter, the perfection itself was the anomaly. Its features so sharp that experts believed it was struck under atypical pressure or with highly polished dies. The reflectivity of its fields mimicked that of proof coins struck in San Francisco, yet it carried the D Mint mark of Denver, blending two worlds of production in a way that defied explanation. Grading services like PCGs and NGC documented each specimen meticulously, assigning unique serial numbers and high-resolution photographs. Their certifications turned these coins into icons, protected within transparent holders that preserve them for generations. For collectors, the thrill lies not just in ownership, but in discovery. Every person who searches through rolls or inherited collections dreams of finding something like the 1991 D Quarter, a reminder that treasures may still rest unnoticed in everyday currency. To identify such a coin, one must inspect carefully under good light, looking for extraordinary luster, sharp strike details especially in Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers, and flawless surfaces free of bag marks or scratches, a weight slightly within tolerance and a perfectly formed rim, are further signs of mint state preservation. Once a potential rarity is spotted, it should be handled with gloves and submitted for grading. Only professional authentication can reveal true market value, and when a coin of this magnitude appears, it draws worldwide attention. Auction houses like Heritage auction stacks. Bowers and great collections become theaters of excitement. Collectors, investors, and institutions all compete, bids rising into millions as history changes hands. The moment the auctioneer's gavel falls, the crowd feels the echo of numismatic legend, a simple coin transformed into a masterpiece of value and human achievement. What makes the 1991 D Quarter story even more fascinating is how it bridges past and present. linking the era of traditional minting to the precision of modern technology. Its flawless form demonstrates what machinery and skill can achieve, while its accidental rarity reminds us that perfection sometimes arises by chance. For those who study coins, this paradox is endlessly captivating. Beyond the numbers and grades lies a philosophical reflection on craftsmanship and discovery. The collectors who chase such rarities often describe the emotional rush of finding one, a sense of holding time itself, tangible proof that history still hides surprises. The 1991 D quarter also reflects broader trends in the coin market, as investors recognize coins not merely as collectibles, but as alternative assets. High-grade modern rarities have gained serious value, supported by transparency from grading companies and digital marketplaces. A coin certified by PCGs or NGC with a top population grade becomes part of a tracked registry set, where competition among collectors drives prices higher. The 1991 D Washington quarter in its highest grades has become one such benchmark, symbolizing the pinnacle of modern mint quality. For new collectors, the story of this coin teaches patience and attention. It encourages them to learn grading standards, to respect authenticity, and to appreciate history in the smallest details. It also guides them on where and how to sell such finds. Major auction platforms remain the best for top-tier specimens, while online venues like eBay or Great Collections serve the broader community. But true numismatists often build relationships with trusted dealers who can navigate valuation and negotiation with care. When a coin like the 1991 D reaches the open market, it is no longer just a collectible. It becomes a cultural artifact, representing innovation, precision, and national pride. Every time it changes ownership, it renews that legacy, reminding all who see it that greatness can reside in the humblest of forms. Under magnification, one can still admire the fine texture of Washington's profile, the perfect reading along the edge, and the gleam that has endured for more than 3 decades. Untouched by time, preserved against all odds, it is said that the coin glows differently under light, a rare internal brilliance that makes it seem almost alive. Whether or not that is true, the legend continues, whispered through collector circles and auction catalogs, a symbol of perfection and mystery combined. As this story draws to a close, remember that the world of numismatics is vast and ever-changing. Yet the lessons remain the same. Patience, observation, and curiosity lead to discovery. The 1991 D Washington quarter stands as proof of that truth, from a single minting floor in Denver to the hands of collectors across the globe. It carries the message that fortune favors the watchful and history rewards those who listen. So keep your eyes open. Check every coin that passes through your hands, because one day you might be the next to uncover a masterpiece hidden in plain sight, waiting silently in your pocket, ready to tell its story to the world.